You're still there?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I thought we had an hour, or not an hour, I'm sorry, a minute and a half left. So I was just trying to make a quick point and get
Yeah,
back to you.
yeah.
Not sure what happened there. Is this going to erase what we just did?
No, no, it shouldn't do that.
Okay, well, I certainly hope not.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll look it up on a different site. But yeah, you wanted to kind of finish, or I just saw you talking, so I thought I'd jump on.
oh, yeah, yeah. I just, I think that we agree on a lot of points.
Yeah.
And the main thing I think we disagree on is the fact that you believe that your life is given to you by God, and therefore you have no right to your own life because God does. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. But even if even if I wasn't a Christian, I would still, and I think we all have this basic kind of
Okay,
knowledge, this intrinsic instinct that we know that life is good and should not be extinguished
and
under
I
any
agree.
circumstances.
I agree
Yeah,
wholeheartedly. But I do
yeah,
not, as I said earlier, I would not impose my views, especially if they're based in just religion. Because I agree there's a moral argument here, but we're not, I don't think we have time to get into that. But
yeah.
I think that it's dangerous when somebody says, my religious beliefs tell me that life is sacred, and anyone who takes their own life is violating that belief of mine. So
Can
let's
I just, yeah,
I was just going to ask if we could, if I could ask you this question. It's going to be hard
mhm.
because it's kind of hard to get out, especially if you're a pastor. But if you were an atheist and you didn't have the belief that God was there and that you weren't given that from God, and
Mhm.
the only source of life you had was from your parents and then in yourself,
Mhm.
how would you defend against somebody deciding, you know what, I just don't want to live anymore? And if they have legitimate reasons, such as, a terminal cancer that leaves them in so much pain that they can't function.
Yeah. I mean, I would, if I didn't have any objective moral values, or if I didn't have the hope that I have, I would probably agree with you, and I would feel the same way that most people do. But the fact that
Okay.
I feel a certain way, can I just finish? The
Yeah.
fact that I feel a certain way, or that I'm experiencing something, doesn't change the fundamental realities of what is good and what is not good, or what is moral and what is not moral. So what I want to say is here is that we're not arguing about me imposing my views on the world, trying to take away something from the world.
No,
What we're
you
doing is we're arguing about you and the assisted suicide campaign trying to give something to the world. You're trying to offer suicide in a way that is more tolerable. People can commit suicide if they want, but you're offering it and you're enabling it and making it easier for people to commit suicide,
no, I'm not
less
making it
painfully.
easier. It's the easiest thing to do in the world right now.
So
The
then
only
why
thing
have it done in a hospital?
Because people want to die in peace. They don't want to have to jump off a bridge. They want to be able to sit
All
around a
right, so
bed.
you're making it
They
easier.
they
You're making it
I'm not
easier.
just making it easier, I'm making it more compassionate, okay? You are
How is
essentially
it compassionate? It's still death.
telling these people that if they don't have the right to do it, that they have to do it behind everyone's back. And that is not okay, because then they can't tell their family, then they can't sit around with doctors and talk to them, because maybe somebody who's feeling this way would go see a doctor and say, this is how I feel and this is what I want to do. And maybe that doctor could give them news that they hadn't heard elsewhere, or give them options, or maybe give them a few more months. But to think that by merely acknowledging, because you're not giving people this, you're acknowledging it. So you're not giving them the right to commit suicide. You're acknowledging that they have a right to commit suicide. And so by acknowledging that they have a right to commit suicide, and as I was reading that statement about, you know, drugs, alcohol, all those things, people are going to do them no matter what. So it's not an argument of are people going to commit suicide or aren't they? It's, are people going to commit
Right.
suicide in a safe way with a doctor, with their family who loves them, or are they going to do it alone and afraid?
So can I ask you a question then? If some this I'm just going to equate the situation here, and you tell me if this is correct or not. But if I come to you and I say I'm going to kill myself, I have a gun, I'm going to blow my brains out, and you say no, I'm going to give you some pills. Is that any different? Because you're still helping me commit suicide. It's just a different method. So I mean,
No, but if you
we
said,
both
if
recognize.
I understand what you're saying, but if you said, listen, I have a gun right now and I want to blow my brains out because I know that if I decide to try and have a peaceful suicide and it's interrupted, then I'll go to jail and I'll be locked up for it. I'll be
Yeah,
put in
I'm
a
pretty.
psych ward. So I would say that it's not the choice between gun or pills, it's the choice between a gun alone and sitting in a comfortable hospital bed with your family surrounding you and the support of doctors who are there to make sure that you're as comfortable as possible and who double check with you multiple times. I've watched documentaries on assisted suicide. They do everything they can to try and talk the person out of it. But at the end, they say it's your choice. So these doctors are not in it. Like, I can understand Planned Parenthood arguments about abortion, that they're only there to provide abortion. But these doctors are not in it to make money for people killing themselves. I promise you, if you spoke to any of these doctors and said, all right, if a patient came in, would you prefer the end result, them committing suicide via assistance from you, or you providing them some way to give them a little more time? I can almost guarantee every single one of those doctors would want to give them more time. But
So
if the
yeah,
person said, I don't want to, I can't do this anymore, then at least they'd
yeah,
have the option of being able to do it peacefully with the people they
yeah.
love and not being
So
punished
what
by
what
the
you're
law.
yeah. So what you're saying is that suicide is the only option, but we should just provide it in a safer, more peaceable way. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if suicide becomes the only option, then yes.
Well, how would suicide become the only option?
Uh,
Because you're saying
if
that
somebody had a terminal
you're,
illness that, let's say, would kill them in 3 months, and every
yeah,
single day that they were alive was
hmm,
excruciating pain. For instance, I remember my dog, my golden retriever, when she got cancer. Within 2 weeks, she went from being healthy to being lethargic, swollen. She wasn't able to move. She was just miserable. She was crying, and it was heartbreaking seeing her go through that. Now, we took
so
her
in
to,
that case, was suicide the only option?
euthanizing her was the morally correct thing to do rather than keep her around for myself, because it would have been
But was that
selfish.
the only option?
What other option was there? There wasn't a cure to the cancer. It was terminal. She was going to die in maybe a month. So either we could have kept her around where she would have been in constant pain and misery for a month just so we could feel better, or we could end her misery because we loved her with all of our heart and we wanted her to be at peace. So imagine if they made euthanizing your dog illegal. Imagine if your dog was hit by a car and it was just so mangled that they couldn't really do much except just wait for it to die. Would you sit there in
Well,
that hospital
well,
room with and I know I'm comparing dogs to people, but I think this is a good example. Would you sit in that room and say, you know what? I'm just going to sit here and watch my dog suffer until it dies, rather than saying, you know
well,
what? I can see how much pain it's in and I want it to go peacefully because I love him.
yeah. Well, okay. I'll just jump in there. You are comparing dogs to people because I do
They're
believe there
both
is a
sentient
fundamental
beings
difference
that feel pain.
between the life of a dog and the life of a human.
They're both sentient
But
beings that feel pain.
on another point, though, I just want to say that in the life of a human, you're saying that they can commit suicide or they can live in pain. But what you don't acknowledge is there are thousands of people. I don't know the number, so I'm not going to say thousands, but there is. I mean, when Brittany Maynard said she wanted to commit suicide and she moved to Oregon, and she became like the new poster girl for assisted suicide. There was multiple people that messaged her with the same terminal cancer, and they said, hey, Brittany, you don't have to do this. Suicide is not the only option. They said there's a better way. You can live and die peacefully. And in Brittany's own, in most people, like I've already iterated, that most people that commit assisted suicide are doing so because they fear the loss of autonomy. It's not because they're in unbearable suffering. But even if they were in unbearable suffering, there are other people that choose not to have suicide.
And that's their
Not,
right.
yeah.
So all I'm arguing for during this
Therefore,
debate is
suicide is
rights.
not the only option, and we don't have to proliferate it to make it more open to people.
It's
Because
already
what you're
open to
doing there is
people, though.
you're
That's the
endangering
point.
the rest of the
That's
population
the point,
who
though. Is
doesn't want to commit suicide.
you're not opening it up. All you're doing is saying you don't
Opening it
have
up.
to.
Well, how are you not opening up? They can already do it.
Yes,
All you're doing is opening up
exactly.
to make it easier.
You're not making it, well, you're making it easier in the sense that it'll be more comfortable and it'll be more peaceful.
Right.
It's not easier because then, okay, here's the difference between assisted suicide in the future and the way it is now. The way it is now, if I wanted to kill myself, I'd go buy a gun and I'd shoot myself in the head. The way it is with assisted suicide,
the way it is, that and taking some pills,
or that. The way it is with assisted suicide is you have to see a doctor, you have to be cleared, they have to determine that you are of a sound mind and that you're not making this decision out of complete and utter, they make you wait, they interview you. So if anything, this should actually be a card in your favor, because it wouldn't make suicide just go to the store, buy a gun, buy a rope, and do it. It would have to be something where people could feel comfortable going. Because right now, okay, if I went to a doctor right now and told them I was feeling suicidal and I wanted to go buy a gun and shoot myself, they would lock me up instantly. They would have to, by law. Now, if you went to a doctor and assisted suicide was okay, they would say, listen, I can understand how bad you feel and I can understand how you feel that way. And if after talking to me and going through all these things, you still feel you want to go that route, then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I want to make sure that this is what you want to do. So if anything, this should be an argument for your side, because it doesn't make it easier. It makes it harder in some ways, but it makes it safer so that the person doesn't make an irrational decision, because most of the suicides that happen are irrational. They're in the heat of the moment. The person's feeling desperate and they don't know what else to do. So if they had the alternative of being able to talk to somebody without worrying about being locked up or being ostracized or being seen as an immoral sinner, then maybe they would feel like they have hope. Because I can tell you right now that when I've been suicidally depressed and I've been in a hospital where I could have gotten help, I didn't want to ask for it because I was too afraid to be locked in a psych unit where I knew I wouldn't get any. Now, I don't think because I was depressed, I should have seen a doctor that would have told me that. But I'll go back to the, terminal illnesses, that those people, if they go in and tell a doctor the same thing, they have to worry about being arrested. I think that's disgusting. Okay.
Yeah. So as far as I know, if you are committing suicide or you're thinking about committing suicide, I'm a youth pastor, but I work part-time as security in the psych wards. So my job is to actually restrain people when they are having suicidal ideation and make sure that they do not harm themselves. That's what I get paid to do by the government, is not help people not to harm themselves. But I think, the subjective variables are different. Yeah, I mean, but it still comes down to the same basic thing. People are in pain and they want to die. Should we make this more accessible, or should we just let them not have that option if they want to? In your case, if say you entered the psych ward and you were locked up, whatever, and at least you would have gotten help for that, right? You would have had.
No, they don't help you at all. What they do is they shove pills down your throat. They take your shoelaces. They treat you like the psych units in our country do not really
Yeah.
help people that much.
So what's the difference between that happening, you seeing that psychiatrist, and you seeing an end of life doctor? Because the only difference is that the end of life doctor is going to recommend that, hey, you can end your life. That's one of the
No,
options.
exactly. They would give me more options. They would give me
So they would give you the ability to do
they
that,
would give
right?
me
Whereas a
all the other.
psychiatrist would say, no, you can't, you shouldn't be able to do that.
Yes.
Because we know intrinsically that suicide is not good.
No, it's
It's
because
not
we
right.
feel like it's not good and it's not right, because we
And
think
where
about,
does that feeling come
because
from?
we internalize it. You may have a good life. You may have never thought about suicide on a daily basis. You may have never been in so much pain and so much misery that you've thought about it obsessively day after day after day. And and so you internalize it and think, you know what? I can't empathize with those people because I've never been there. And so if you've never been there, it's very easy to say, oh, well, I don't want that to be an option. But there are
Well,
people
I'm not
that,
going to go into too many details, but I will say that I can empathize with that sentiment. But even in that case, if someone were in that position where they were struggling with depression and suicide, is it still right for them to commit suicide if they have depression? Would you want to offer that option to them?
no, not if it's just depression.
Because that's what you're arguing for.
No, I'm arguing for the fundamental right for someone to do what they want with their body. If somebody decides that if they're sitting at home and
Which
they're
is, if they want to commit suicide, that right should be given to them, correct?
not given to them, it's innate. It's not something you
Or
give
offered, sorry.
or just legalized. It's something that they
Offered
already
on a
have.
legal basis.
That's
Yeah,
something that they already have the ability to do. And instead of
yeah.
punishing them and putting their families
Nobody's
through hell,
punishing anybody.
oh yeah,
It's not like
they
cops
open up
are
a
out to
criminal
find suicidal
investigation.
people and lock them
They
up.
have to open up a
They only do that as a precaution
they
to keep
have to
them
open
safe.
up they have to open up a criminal investigation, and then they have to put the family who's already going through hell through more hell, and then it's even harder to get the body. I mean, the
Yeah,
difference
well, I don't
between,
agree with that. I don't agree with penalizing somebody. We don't do that here.
but you're saying you want to
Um,
revoke, or not revoke, but you're saying that you don't think that people should be given, or not given, that you don't think that people should be allowed to have the rights that they were born with, which is a right to life and a right to death.
we're all going to live and we're all going to die, but whether you can offer that option to somebody, whether they can take their own life,
Is
is a
their
completely different
choice.
story.
Is their choice.
Sorry?
Yes, and it's their choice. Just like, okay,
So
food. How about this? What if you met somebody who said, I don't want to eat and I'm going to starve myself?
mhm.
What
Well,
would you?
typically, if that was in the hospital, we would have to force them to eat because A,
But
we want them to live and survive.
okay, so at what point do you stop doing this whole policing other people's lives and realize that if they want to make that choice, it's their choice to make? Now,
Look,
the whole,
we can police in one of two ways. We can police by saying A, we want you to live and we want you to survive and have a healthy, fulfilling life, or we can police by saying, hey, it's the book is open. You can commit suicide if you want. And we can offer that service to you. Is that what you're saying is better than helping people live and survive?
I'm saying more options is always better than less options.
But what if the options are not intrinsically good for you? What if you're offering somebody drugs or alcohol?
If
That's not a good option.
I think that if you were to talk to people who are willing to pay for the money to fly to another country to do this, those people aren't doing that, paying for the ability to fly to another country just so they can have a peaceful suicide because it's on a whim, or because they feel like they don't have any other options,
I
because they
never said
probably
anything
don't.
about a whim.
Well, I'm just saying that the people who are doing these things, first off, they're not allowed to through assisted suicide just because they're depressed. That's not something that happens. It's not
That's
allowed to
not true. They do that all over Eastern Europe, in Belgium, and the Netherlands. People are literally committing suicide because they're depressed.
and they don't have, then we need to have, well, again, I still think they have a fundamental right to be able to do that. Now, do I think that there should be more stringent interview processes and other steps that come before that, of course. I'm going to take what you said just for the sake of argument. I can't verify it, but for the
I
sake
will
of,
give you sources afterwards.
yeah, you seem like you're not citing anything that's out of the crazy. But even if that's the case, that just means we need better regulations for what's going to happen if somebody decides to take that route. That doesn't mean that you just go, oh, because some people have been doing this, we need to stop it for everyone. Because the people who aren't suffering from just depression, the people who are suffering from horrible, debilitating, life-ruining disabilities should be able to have that decision. And just because there's a few people out there who are depressed enough that they want to commit suicide, which I believe they should have a right to do if they're an adult, then we shouldn't be hampering that by saying that, well, let's compare your case to all these depressed people. Because if we open up the floodgates, again, slippery slope argument, and it's really...
But the slippery slope is true, and it's been proven to be true.
It doesn't refute the fact that people have a right to do what they want with their own body, as long as it doesn't infringe on anyone else's rights or anybody else's freedoms. If somebody wants to commit suicide, it is their choice. And to make it illegal and to punish people for doing it and to make them have to isolate themselves if they choose to. And like I said, with alcohol or drugs or any of those other things, it's not a choice. It's not a decision on whether or not it's going to be people committing suicide or people not committing suicide. It's whether or not...
Actually, it is.
No, it's not, because people are committing suicide now, and it's not... People commit suicide on a very, very, very regular basis. I mean, the veteran rate is insane. So nobody's
you don't
stopping
think
them.
that by making it accessible in hospitals,
it's already
not
too accessible? No, because it's already perfectly accessible. We're not talking about something that they'd have to, it's not like some weird FDA thing that they don't have access to. If somebody wants to commit suicide, nothing's stopping them from doing it.
Yeah, just so you know, in Holland and Belgium, the suicides have increased. And it started with the criteria that under hopeless and unbearable suffering, and every year the number is doubling and in some cases tripling. Actually, I don't want to say tripling, but I know that in one country it rose 150%, in another country it rose 200%. So every year the numbers are growing, and in Canada we've just kind of opened the doors for that, and I hope we don't see the same thing happen here. But the fact remains is that
is there a direct correlation between those two?
We've already kind of established the fact that people can commit suicide if they choose to do so. But what we're arguing for assisted suicide laws is that we are giving people more accessible ways to do it.
No,
and
we're
therefore
not.
we are not only
we're
giving...
It's making it harder. They have to go through a process.
How is it making it harder?
Because they have to go...
You're saying it's not...
Because they have to go through a process.
We can give this to you.
Because they have to go through a process.
Yeah, but that process still leads to the same destination.
Yeah,
and it makes it...
except it'll be peaceful. It'll allow a health professional to talk to them about it.
But who wouldn't want to commit suicide peacefully as opposed to with a gun?
People commit suicide with a gun because they feel like they can't talk to anyone about it.
Yeah, and if you go to talk to a doctor, right, and he... now the only difference is with your position, the doctor can offer suicide. In the way that things are right now in most states in your country is that they don't offer suicide. They offer other things that would help them to survive and live a better life. But you're saying that we should also offer them suicide.
I'm saying that as a last resort, they should have that as an option. You're saying that you want to deprive them.
You think it's okay for people to kill themselves. It's not.
Says who?
That's my opinion, but
yeah,
it's
not your opinion, and your opinion shouldn't be hoisted upon an entire country.
Well, your opinion is being voiced on an entire country, so that's the beauty of democracy. We're allowed to speak freely.
It's not my opinion. You would have to... the burden of proof is on you to show me why people do not have a right to their own life. And all you've provided me so far is anecdotal religious stuff. So Again, there's no reason beyond the anecdotal religious reasons you've given me, or
Look,
the fact that
we're
you
both.
personally disagree. And neither of those should have to set laws for an entire country and people that you've never met, that you've never talked to, that don't fit in to this very closed view you seem to have of why people do this.
This is not a closed view. This is the basic fact that I don't believe suicide is good. You believe
I don't
suicide is good
I
under
don't believe
certain
it's
conditions.
good. I never
Then
said it
why do
was
you
good.
think that people should be given the opportunity to do it?
Because it's their right.
So therefore you think it is good.
No. That's a
Yeah,
false equivalency.
that's what you're
No. That
saying.
is a
You're
non
saying that people
sequitur.
should have the
That is a
right to
non
do it. If you
sequitur.
believe that is good, then why should they have the right to do
That
it?
is a non sequitur. I think that
Actually, no,
abortion
it's not. It follows.
I am morally against abortion, but I believe that a woman has a right to choose what she does with her body. Now, the more I get into the abortion topic, the more that kind of murks up. But I believe that when it comes to a person's right to their own autonomy, if they're doing something with abortion, you have to argue about the fetus. But with suicide, it's just that person. And to say, you know what, I don't personally think it's morally acceptable. I don't personally think that's the choice you should make. You cannot hoist your opinions and your own moral beliefs on someone else when they are not infringing upon anyone by making that choice.
Okay, we both, that's your position, and I see where you're coming from. The only difference is, and this is the argument that I should have stated with my last opponent, is that suicide is already, people have the right to commit suicide. We've established that
They
they
don't have
can
the right.
grab a knife and they can do that, right?
No.
So they have that right.
No.
Nobody's withholding that right from them.
Yes, they are.
But
They will be
what we're
arrested and they will
arguing
be
for,
put in jail.
sorry, just let me finish. Just
Sure.
let me finish. What we're arguing for is that we should be offering suicide to people and promoting it as some kind of option for them. So I'm not restricting anybody's rights. What I'm saying is that we should not offer it and say this is a good and acceptable thing to offer people.
That's not how people
That's what you're
talk about
arguing
it.
for.
People don't talk about it like it's a good and acceptable thing. People talk about it like
But if you had your way, people would have the right to recommend it.
as a last resort.
You keep on saying that, but it's still the same. They would still recommend it, or they would still have
Okay,
the
yeah.
option
So
to say,
okay, let's
still
okay. So we'll imagine two different worlds. One world where it's not legal and you can't, and there's no doctors you can see for it, and another world where there is. And the world where doctors don't recommend it and you can't do it and you'll be put in jail if you decide to try. The people who go and see the doctors and exhaust their options at the end of it, when they're in so much pain and they can't deal with it anymore, their only option is to do it themselves. And that puts undue stress on their family. It puts undue stress on, well, I mean, it's nobody should have to go through that alone. And the fact
So
that would be the
you think it's
option,
better if the
and then
person ends up dead as opposed to being in jail, correct?
I'm saying that once that person gets out of jail, they're going to try again and probably be successful. You think jail is going to reform somebody and make them not want to kill themselves? I've been in jail
No,
a few times, and
but
trust
you're
me,
saying
it
you're
makes you
acting
want to
as if
kill
putting
yourself
them in
more.
jail is some kind of, it's not good. I mean, I don't believe
Yeah,
in punishing
jail's
somebody
freaking
that,
horrible. Have you ever been in
yeah,
jail?
but I don't. Let me. I don't think. Yeah, I've been in jail, but I don't think that people that have. I don't think that when you. I think that there's that law there for a reason. I don't believe in punishing somebody for committing suicide, but it's probably there because they've tried to hurt themselves, and they need to be monitored for a while. So there's reasons for that, but there should be no stigma around it. But they should get help, as opposed to saying, hey, you tried to kill yourself with a gun before. Now we'll offer it to you in some pills.
You're saying there should be no stigma for it, yet you're saying that it's morally reprehensible somebody would do it.
I don't think people have the right to take their own life.
Okay,
No.
that's a hell of a stigma.
How is that a stigma? I don't think it's good
Because
for
I
people to
don't
kill
feel like I
themselves.
could,
Is that a bad thing
because
to
I
say?
don't feel like I can talk to somebody about those feelings if they feel like I'm a morally degenerate person for wanting
Hey,
to do
I
that.
never made any judgments against you. If
I
you want to
no,
talk to me about suicide,
no, no,
I do
no.
not judge you at all.
I'm
I accept you. I accept those thoughts. Well, I'm not going to condone them and advocate them.
You don't
There's a
have
difference
to
between
condone them or
there's
advocate them. You just have to accept that people aren't you. That's all you have to
yeah,
do
that's
is go,
fine. But
you know what? Not
you're
everybody
saying
has the
that
same
people
moral
should
viewpoint.
condone and should advocate that
I'm
as a
saying
response.
as a last resort.
Why do you keep saying that as a last resort? It's
Because
still a
you keep on
response. It's
making
still
it
an
sound
option
like if
that
somebody
you're
goes
arguing
into a
should be out
doctor,
there. But you're still justifying it.
because you keep on making it sound like if somebody goes into a doctor and says, "Man, I'm in pain. I have cancer. I'm going to die in 6 months. I don't think I can do this
Mhm.
anymore." You're treating it like that doctor, because assisted suicide is going to be legal, that the first thing that doctor is going to say to him is, "Well, we can kill you today if you'd like." And that's not how it works.
No, but it's still there on the table,
Yes,
right?
and
As
it's there
opposed
on
to
the table
having to
whether it's
live.
legal or not, whether we legalize it or not, it's on the table because their options are either that doctor is going to be able to say, "Okay, we'll work through this, and if things can't get any better, then at least that's an option." And then the other option is if they can't provide that as an option, then what they'll say is, "I'm sorry, I can't help you any further." And then that person goes home and puts a gun in their mouth because they know that no one else is going to help them. So yeah, I feel like more options are better than less.
But what if the options aren't good? How about you offer something that is helpful to that person and say, hey, we'll offer better palliative care, we'll offer better hospice care, we'll help you, we'll
Okay,
comfort you, instead
but
of saying,
what if all those things
I'd rather
fail?
err on the side of trying to help the person live
And what if
as
all those
opposed to
things
saying, hey,
fail?
but there's also the opportunity for you to kill yourself if you want.
Yeah, but what if all those things fail? I'm
Well,
saying I'm saying the difference between our viewpoints right now is that you say we both agree with all of the methods of trying to treat these things and trying to help a person to get to the point where they don't want to die. I think we can agree on that. I think the
of
only
course.
thing that we seem to really disagree on when it comes to this is that I think that people should have that as a choice. Do I think that that should be their first choice? Hell no. Do
Okay,
I
we've
think
we've
that that
already established that they have that choice, right? We've
but
already
it's not
established that.
support.
What you're
Yeah, but they
arguing
can go
for
to
is for
jail
that
for
choice
it
to be made more accessible and more
so
easier.
that
You've
their
already admitted this. It's to make
family
it
can be with
easier,
them, so that their family can be with them. They won't be
right? To make it more
ostracized from
peaceable,
society,
right?
to make it more peaceful.
Right. So, we just want to recommend suicide in a way that's more peaceful, right? That's your position.
After you've exhausted all the other options, yes.
So why not withhold that option and say we'll help you in other ways? Why not? Why offer
Again,
that in the
I
first
just said before you said that after you've exhausted all the other options. So all the other
Yeah,
options
so
have been
let's
exhausted.
just say in my world, say that somebody has exhausted those options and they do want to die. We still come down to the basic disagreement that killing oneself is not a good, it's not an intrinsically good
Who are
and
you to
loving
make that
action,
decision for
whether
them?
that person is in pain or not. Mind you, that most people that do commit assisted suicide don't do it out of pain, they do it out of fear of losing their
Who are
autonomy.
you to make
But
that
nevertheless,
decision?
even if they were doing it out of pain, even that under those circumstances, there are people that choose not to kill themselves. And I still think that pain is not an adequate requirement that satisfies the conditions of taking a life. There is no justification for taking a life, whether it's your own life or the life of somebody else. That's just my position because I have a Christian worldview, but I still believe that life is sacred and that suicide is inherently wrong and we
And
shouldn't
I
be making
believe
it
life is
accessible.
sacred too. And I believe life is so sacred that
Then
I won't.
why do you advocate
Then I, if
offering the
let me
person a life?
finish. I believe life is so sacred that I will refuse, just because I don't think it's necessarily the right thing. I will refuse to impose my own beliefs about how sacred life is on somebody who has exhausted their options and feels like they have made a sound and informed decision, which has probably been over the period of months or even years, especially for people with like ALS. Those people have usually known for years, and they've thought about it extensively. And to
Okay,
be
but
told by somebody like yourself, who will never know what it feels like to lose everything and just
Okay.
essentially lay there with no way to talk, with no way to move, and to tell that person, you know what? It isn't that bad. It can get better. For you to impose your moral beliefs on someone else because you disagree with them is reprehensible. It's
Okay.
okay for you to have your own moral views. It's not okay for you to impose them on other people.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that I'm not imposing my beliefs or views on anybody. They already have that freedom to do whatever they want. What I'm arguing for is that we don't advocate or condone things that are not available to them at the moment. We shouldn't offer them
But
that.
they are available.
Right, but if we legalize it and make it more accessible, that's advocating it, that's condoning it, and you
No,
may.
it's just giving them an option. It's not advocating and it's not condoning. It's saying, okay, like for instance with chemotherapy, when we discovered that, they didn't
So we're not
advocate and
offering
condone it.
something
They just said,
condoning.
listen, if you choose to do chemotherapy, that's your choice. It'll make you sick, it'll make you miserable, you'll feel like you're going to die, and it could kill you. But yet we're going to give you that as an option because you're an individual who has a right to your own autonomy. And if you choose to take this path, then we're going to support you and we're going to make it so that you don't feel so alone and so miserable. Instead of making people feel like, you know what, if I make this choice, I'm all alone.
You're
And
still
that's the
making
worst
it
part
sound like
about suicide.
suicide is the only option.
No, because I keep on going back to the point where we've exhausted every other option.
Right, and in that case, there's still another option, which is to live, right? Albeit in very painful circumstances, but there is another option, which is
So
to
you
not
would
commit
force,
suicide.
if you had it your way, you
Yeah.
would make sure that people could not commit suicide no matter how much pain and suffering they were going through.
I would
No
not
matter,
offer it. I would not offer it.
oh, so you'd be okay with them shooting themselves.
No, obviously not. What I'm saying is that we should
So
not
what is
be.
preferable? Somebody shooting themselves or somebody laying in a bed surrounded by people they love with a doctor who can
Neither
administer
is
something that would,
preferable. Neither is preferable. That's like saying, do you
neither
want
is
two people to
preferable.
die or three people to die? Neither is preferable. What I'm saying is that
How
you're
is
opening the
neither?
door
That's no.
for it to be an option on the table, which is not helpful to either to people on their deathbeds. It's not helpful to the terminally ill. It's not helpful to vulnerable people like the disabled or the elderly. It's not helpful in any way, shape, or form because you're
To
opening the
you,
door for more people to commit suicide.
and have to go through the process of having to prove that they're able to.
It doesn't matter. They're still going. How is one able to commit suicide? You're still offering that to them. I mean, we come down to the basic fundamental distinction whether suicide is a good thing or a bad thing. In
That's
certain
not what
cases,
this,
you
no, that
argue
is not, no, that is,
whether
no, that is
you're
not what this debate about. This debate about, this debate is about whether or not people have a basic right to commit suicide. And they
and we've
do.
already established the fact that they have that right already. So, regardless of what you and I
They
say,
don't
they
have,
already have that right. Okay,
they
unless
have the right to the extent that I have the right to walk around naked. I have that right, but if I do it, I'm going to get arrested.
well,
So
yeah,
it's
because
a,
walking around naked is not good for society unless you want everybody to walk around naked.
I'm
I
just
mean,
saying that you could make a lot of arguments to say that we have the right for that. I'm
right,
saying
but
that
you
if
can
you
still
gave
do it.
people
So
the
if you wanted to,
ability
you could walk around
to
naked.
exercise their rights, okay, and that's why they invented nudist beaches, because they
So
didn't want to tell people you can't ever be naked in public, so they made nudist beaches. And I can imagine having the same conversation about nudity and having somebody before nudist beaches existed saying, oh man, if you start creating a place where people can go to be naked, they'll start doing it more and more. And then those people
yeah,
who are comfortable
but
being
but
nude at
there's
a
a
beach will
fundamental
start
difference
trying to
between
do it
being
more
naked and
places.
dying, right? We're offering people death
But what
here.
I'm saying is
We're not just
you
saying you can
keep
go
going
party
back
on
to
the naked
slippery
beach.
slope.
We're saying, hey, you can kill yourself now, right? We're
You
we're
keep
we're
going
saying
back to the
if
slippery
there's a
slope
beach where
argument.
you want to go kill yourself, we'll give you this beach where you can go kill yourself. That's what we're equivocating it with.
I'm saying that you are making a wild assumption that if we allowed people to have a peaceful suicide, I would be willing to bet that if people had the ability to have a peaceful suicide, or at least talk to somebody about the option, it would deter especially people who are just suffering from depression, because you've made a fallacy of equivocation, as far as I know, earlier. Unless you know that the statistics you were talking about, the suicide rate increasing, unless you can show that that is directly correlated to that, then you're just making the assumption that
All I
because
know is
that
that the
happens.
suicide rate increases every year in Eastern Europe.
Okay, well,
Has
that's
been
making an
increasing.
assumption. Okay, and there's
The legally
so
assisted suicide.
many other things in Europe going on, from homelessness to loss of jobs to divorces. Divorces have gone through the roof.
Yeah, I'll
And
concede
homelessness
there's
has
other
gone through the
factors,
roof.
but the most
Yes,
reasonable
exactly.
conclusion is that it's probably because it's more accessible.
That's not the more reasonable conclusion,
It's
because
the simplest conclusion. If you offer
so
a
you
service
think that all
to God,
these
service
people in
here.
you think that all these people in Europe just didn't think about committing suicide until it was legal, and then they're like, you know what? I had thought about killing myself for a long time, but now that it's legal, well, shit, might as
It's
well
not
just
just
go for it.
legal; it's socially acceptable, which makes it
It's
easier for
still
it to
not
happen.
socially acceptable, which is why we're having this conversation, because there's
Yeah,
people like
because
you
you
who
think killing
refuse to let
yourself
people
is
have
there's nothing
fundamental rights.
fundamentally wrong with that. Whereas I think there's
No,
something fundamentally wrong with killing yourself or taking your own life. And I don't think
I
it
think
should be
there's something
socially
wrong with
acceptable.
it, but I
Whereas
don't
if we
think that
legalized it, it would be socially acceptable. There would be there would be no
gay marriage
consequence.
is legal and it's not socially acceptable in a lot of places.
What does that have to do with committing suicide?
Because you said that if it was legalized, it would become socially acceptable. That's not true. You keep on making these fallacies,
Well,
and
you
it's
can't police a
getting
person's
tiresome.
behavior. So like their mannerisms and their attitudes, you can't police that. So that's another false equivocation as well.
That I can't what?
Well, you're saying, sorry, I didn't even hear what you said. Like, what did you say is legal, but it doesn't increase?
Oh, that that gay marriage has been
Oh,
legalized.
sorry, I thought you said something else. My bad.
Oh yeah, but gay marriage has been legalized, and it doesn't encourage, like, people are still being ostracized for it. Suicide is even more controversial than gay marriage in a lot of people's minds, especially the religious. And so I really don't think that just because it's legal, same with abortion, abortion is legal, and it's still a very hot topic issue. Just making something legal doesn't make it okay overnight in everyone's minds. There
Well,
are going to be people
actually,
like
it does.
you.
If something is
So
given,
you change your mind overnight if it was
if
legalized.
yeah, of course, if something is okayed by the government and it's offered in the hospitals, of course I'm going to think it's acceptable. Why wouldn't I? Of
So
course,
so what's up with your morals then? Are your morals only accountable to government?
no, but
So
I'm
your
saying it's
moral
been
guide
increased. We're not talking
is the
about morals.
government?
We're talking about the increase of suicide based on its social acceptability. And if we open the doors and say yes, we can offer this to you. It's in the hospitals. It's an option on the table now. Suicide, whatever. It is already socially acceptable now, and that makes it easier and more agreeable with people who may not have ordinarily wanted to commit suicide. Obviously,
Okay, well, somebody asked, is torture better than death, or is death better than torture? That's a good question. So I'd like to pose that to you.
I say neither is good.
Okay, well, that's not the question. You have to pick one or the other. Is
Well,
torture better than death,
is the death
or is death better than torture?
How is the death being? If I have to kill myself, then I would rather be tortured.
So if you were being waterboarded for 6 months straight,
Yeah,
now, okay, I can almost guarantee you'd beg to die,
yeah, I'd
because
probably want to die,
waterboarding,
but I wouldn't kill myself if I had the option, or at least I'd try not to.
you'd beg for death within a few minutes.
Well,
It
first of
wouldn't
all,
take long for
Christians
them to.
historically have been known to, like, the church was born in blood. We have died at the stake. We've died on crosses. We've died over the past 2,000 years. More Christians have been murdered for our faith and tortured in the last 100 years